What happens when one broken glass destroys everything you thought you knew about survival? Alara Quinn's hands were shaking the night she shattered that crystal tumbler at Dante Varelli's table. The most dangerous man in Chicago, a crime boss who could end her life with a single word. Everyone in that restaurant held their breath, waiting for blood. But he didn't destroy her. He watched her. And that was worse, because in his world, attention meant death. Stay with me until the end of this story. Drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The thing about working at Aurelio's was simple. You kept your head down, you kept your mouth shut, and you never, ever made eye contact with the men in the private dining room. Alara had perfected this over 2 years. She moved through the restaurant like smoke, present but unnoticed, efficient but forgettable. Her uniform was always pressed, her dark hair always pulled back tight, her expression carefully neutral. The other servers whispered about the people who came through those doors, politicians, executives, men who spoke in low voices about things that could ruin lives or end them. She didn't want to know. Knowing meant involvement, and involvement meant danger. It was a Tuesday night in March when everything fell apart. The private room had been reserved weeks in advance. Management had been tense all day, snapping at servers, checking every detail twice. Alara didn't ask questions. She just watched as they brought in the expensive bottles, the ones kept in the back vault, and arranged white orchids that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Quinn. Marcus, the floor manager, pulled her aside at 6:30. His face was pale. You're on the private room tonight. Her stomach dropped. I thought Vivian called in sick. Convenient, right? His laugh was bitter. You know the rules? Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look at faces. Don't remember anything. Good. He straightened his tie, though it was already perfect. And Quinn, whatever you see, whatever you hear, it didn't happen. She wanted to refuse, wanted to say she had a headache, a family emergency, anything. But Alara Quinn didn't have the luxury of saying no to overtime pay. Her student loans didn't care about her fear. Her landlord didn't accept excuses instead of rent. So she nodded. The men arrived at 7. Alara was in the back when they came through, but she heard the shift in the restaurant's atmosphere. The main dining room went quiet, not silent, but muted, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole world. Through the kitchen's porthole window, she watched them cross the floor. 6 men in dark suits, 1 woman in red, her heels clicking against marble. And at the center, him. She didn't know his name yet. Didn't need to. You could tell who he was by how everyone else moved around him, like planets orbiting something massive and dangerous. He was tall, dark-haired, maybe 40. His suit probably cost more than her car, but it wasn't the clothes that made people step back. It was something in the way he moved, like the air itself rearranged to accommodate him. That's Varelli, whispered Tom, one of the line cooks. He crossed himself quickly. Jesus, they got the devil himself tonight. Alara turned away before anyone noticed her looking. She entered the private room carrying a tray of water glasses, eyes fixed on the crystal stems. The room smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Anticipation, maybe. Fear. Gentlemen, ma'am, she kept her voice steady as she set down the glasses. I'll be taking care of you this evening. No one responded. She didn't expect them to. She worked mechanically for the first hour, brought bread, poured wine, cleared plates. The conversation flowed around her like she wasn't there. Talk of shipments and territories, percentages and problems. She let it wash over her without absorbing it. That was the trick. Hear without listening, see without watching. It worked until she made the mistake of glancing up. He was looking directly at her. Alara's breath caught. She'd broken the first rule, eye contact. His eyes were dark, unreadable. She couldn't tell if he was angry or curious or nothing at all. For 3 seconds that felt like an hour, they stared at each other. Then she looked away and retreated to the kitchen, her heart hammering. You okay? Marcus grabbed her arm. You look sick. I'm fine. The lie tasted metallic. They need another bottle of the Barolo. Table's almost empty. She didn't want to go back in, but she picked up the bottle anyway, checked the label twice, and pushed through the door. The conversation had shifted. They were talking about someone named Castellano, and from the tone, Castellano had made a very bad decision. The woman in red was smoking despite the restaurant's policy, and no one was going to tell her to stop. Alara approached the table, focused on the empty bottle. She reached for it just as one of the men gestured, his elbow knocking her wrist. It happened in slow motion. The bottle slipped from her fingers. She grabbed for it, missed. It hit the edge of the table and shattered, deep red wine exploding across white linen like arterial spray. Glass flew. Wine splashed across expensive suits. The room went dead silent. Elara stood frozen, wine dripping from her hands, surrounded by broken crystal. Her mind went blank with panic. She'd just destroyed a bottle worth more than she made in a month. Spilled it on men who probably killed people for smaller offenses. Her voice came out strangled. I'm so sorry. It's fine. The voice came from the head of the table. Him, Virelli. She looked up without thinking. He was wiping wine from his sleeve with a napkin, his expression unchanged. Like this was nothing. Like she hadn't just committed a fireable offense at minimum. Sir, I apologize, she started again. I said it's fine. His tone was mild, but something in it made her mouth snap shut. He looked at the man who'd knocked her wrist. Carlo, apologize to the lady. Carlo's face went white. Yes, sorry. Clean this up, Virelli said, still looking at Elara. Bring another bottle. Carefully this time. She nodded and scrambled to gather the larger pieces of glass, her hands shaking so badly she nearly cut herself. Marcus appeared with a towel and dustpan, shooting her a look that promised a conversation later. Together they cleaned the mess in silence, while the men at the table returned to their discussion, like nothing had happened. But when Elara brought the replacement bottle, gripping it with both hands this time, she could feel eyes on her. Not just his. All of them, watching to see if she'd break again. She didn't. She poured the wine, cleared the stained linens, brought new ones. She made it through the rest of service without another mistake, moving like a ghost through the room. By the time dessert was cleared and coffee poured, her back was rigid with tension and her smile felt painted on. Will there be anything else? She asked the table at large, careful not to look at anyone directly. No. Virelli's voice. Thank you. She nodded and escaped. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Tom offered her a glass of water, which she drank too fast. You're lucky you still have hands, he said. I know. Virelli doesn't usually let mistakes slide. I know, but he had. Why? The question nagged at her as she finished her closing duties, as she changed out of her wine-stained uniform, as she collected her tips and coat. Why had he stopped it from becoming a disaster? Marcus cornered her by the time clock. What happened in there? An accident. He said it was fine. Dante Virelli doesn't do fine. Marcus rubbed his face. Look, just be careful, okay? Men like that don't forget faces. The name clicked into place. Dante Virelli. She'd heard it before, whispered in the same breath as words like organization and family and don't ask questions. The kind of man who owned restaurants like this one, probably. The kind who owned a lot of things, including people who crossed him. I'll be careful, she promised. She left through the back entrance, pulling her coat tight against the March wind. The alley behind Aurelio's smelled like garbage and old grease. Her car was parked 3 blocks away. She couldn't afford the close lot. She walked quickly, keys already in her hand. Halfway to her car, she heard footsteps behind her. Elara's whole body tensed. Don't run. Running makes you pray. She kept walking, picking up her pace just slightly, listening to see if the footsteps matched her rhythm. They did. Her car was still a block away. Too far. She thought about the pepper spray in her purse, tried to remember if she'd replaced it after the canister expired. Probably not. Excuse me. She spun around. It was one of the men from the dinner, not Virelli, one of the others, younger, with slicked back hair and a scar through his eyebrow. He stood 6 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. Yes? Her voice only shook a little. Mr. Virelli wanted to make sure you got to your car safely. Rough neighborhood. She almost laughed. The danger in this neighborhood had just approached her. I'm fine. Thank you. I'll walk with you, just to be sure. It wasn't a request. They walked in silence. Elara wanted to say something, wanted to ask why, wanted to understand what was happening, but her survival instinct, the same one that had kept her invisible for 2 years, told her to stay quiet. Her car was a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door. She unlocked it with shaking hands. "There you go," the man said. "Safe and sound." "Thank you," she managed. "Word of advice?" He leaned against the hood of the car next to hers. "Next time you're nervous, don't grip the bottle so tight. That's when accidents happen. Relax your hands." She stared at him. "I'll remember that." "Good night, miss." She got in her car, locked the doors, and sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. In her rearview mirror, she watched him walk away, phone already to his ear. The drive home was a blur. She lived in a studio apartment in a neighborhood that was politely called transitional. Her building had good locks and bad heating. She climbed 3 flights of stairs, let herself in, and finally let the adrenaline drain. Her hands were still shaking as she made tea she didn't drink. The smart thing would be to quit. Call Marcus tomorrow, say she had a family emergency, disappear. Find another job, another restaurant, somewhere that didn't cater to men who had other men walk women to their cars at 10 p.m. But she needed this job. The pay was good, the tips were better, and she was still paying off loans from a degree she'd never finished. Life didn't pause for fear. She'd just have to be more careful, more invisible. No more eye contact, no more mistakes. She could do that, couldn't she? The next night, she requested a shift in the main dining room. Marcus gave it to her without question. He probably wanted her away from the private rooms as much as she did. She worked a double, served businessmen and couples on dates, collected decent tips, and didn't think about dark eyes watching her. Mostly didn't think about it. It was Thursday when she saw him again. He came through the front entrance at 8:30, alone this time. No entourage, no woman in red. Just him in a charcoal suit, speaking quietly to the hostess. Alara was clearing table 12 and froze mid-reach for a water glass. The hostess led him toward the main dining room, toward her section. No, 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 no. But yes. She watched in horror as they approached table 7, a corner booth with good lighting and privacy. Her table. "Alara will take excellent care of you, Mr. Varelli," the hostess said with a smile that looked painful. He sat down without looking at Alara. "Thank you." The hostess fled. Alara stood there with a bus tub full of dirty dishes, her mind racing. She could ask Marcus to switch tables, could fake sick, could... "Are you going to stand there all night?" His voice was mild, almost amused. She set down the bus tub and pulled out her order pad, defaulting to professional autopilot. "Good evening. Can I start you with something to drink? Scotch? Neat? Whatever you think is good." She wrote it down even though she'd remember. "Any preferences?" Surprise me. That felt like a test. She went to the bar and ordered the Macallan 18, expensive enough to show she wasn't afraid to choose well, not so expensive that it seemed like she was trying too hard. The bartender raised an eyebrow but poured it. When she brought it back, Varelli was reading something on his phone. She set the glass down carefully, hyper-aware of every movement. "The Macallan," she said. 18 year. He looked at the glass, then at her. "Good choice." "Thank you. Are you ready to order, or do you need a few minutes?" "Sit down." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sit." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. You didn't sit with customers. You especially didn't sit with customers like him. But his expression wasn't threatening. It was patient, like he had all the time in the world and knew she'd eventually comply. She sat on the very edge of the booth, ready to bolt. "Relax," he said. "I'm not going to bite." "I should be working." "You are working. I'm a customer, and I'm asking you to sit." Her fingers twisted the edge of her apron. "What do you want?" "To apologize." That was so unexpected she actually looked at him. Up close, his face was harder than she'd thought, all sharp angles and old scars. But his eyes weren't cold. They were tired, maybe. Human. "Carlo's an idiot," he continued. "He knocked your wrist, you dropped the bottle. That wasn't your fault." "I should have been more careful." "Maybe. But you handled it well. No crying, no dramatics. You cleaned it up and kept working." She didn't know what to say to that. He took a sip of the scotch, nodded appreciatively. "You're scared of me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, smart." He set down the glass. "But you don't have to be. Not unless you give me a reason." I don't want to give you any reasons. Good. Then we understand each other. He picked up the menu. The ossobuco. Is it good? The conversation shift gave her whiplash. Yes. Very good. I'll have that. And another one of these. He tapped the Scotch glass. She stood up, grateful for the escape. I'll put that in for you. Ilara. She froze at the sound of her name in his mouth. You work tomorrow night? Yes. Request the private room. Her stomach dropped. Sir. Not for me. There's a reservation. Big party. Good tips. Marcus was going to give it to someone else. I'm suggesting he give it to you instead. Why? He smiled and it changed his whole face, made him look younger, less dangerous. Because you need the money, and you earned it by not falling apart Tuesday night. Consider it a thank you. She wanted to refuse, wanted to say she didn't need his charity or his interference, but the truth was she did need the money, desperately. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. You're welcome. Now go put in my order before this excellent scotch goes to waste. She went. For the rest of his meal, she served him like any other customer. Brought his food, refilled his drink, offered dessert, which he declined. He ate in silence, occasionally checking his phone, and left a tip that was exactly 20%. Professional, normal. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane, calm now, but surrounded by something massive and destructive that could shift direction without warning. Friday night, she worked the private room. The party was a corporate event, 12 people celebrating a promotion. They were loud and happy and tipped well, just like he'd said. She made more in that one night than she usually made in 3. When she left at midnight, there was no one following her to her car. A week passed, then 2. She didn't see Dante Varelli again. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal. She worked her shifts, avoided the private rooms when she could, banked her tips, and tried not to think about dark eyes and quiet voices. Spring crept into Chicago with all the enthusiasm of a reluctant guest. The trees along Michigan Avenue started budding. People emerged from winter hibernation. Ilara's routine was simple. Work, sleep, repeat. On her days off, she ran errands, did laundry, sometimes met her friend Jenna for coffee if their schedules aligned. She didn't date, didn't have time or energy. Her life was small and safe and entirely her own. Then it was April, and he came back. Same table, same time, same request for her section. Good evening, she said, back in professional mode. Scotch? Please, and sit with me for a minute. I really shouldn't... Ilara. He waited until she looked at him. Please. She sat. How have you been? He asked, like they were friends catching up. Fine. Busy. I heard you got the Morrison party last week. How was that? She stared at him. How did you know about that? I own 20% of this restaurant. I know most things. He said it casually, like it was obvious. Like everyone knew Dante Varelli had his fingers in every profitable pie in Chicago. It was fine, she said carefully. Good tips. Good. You're saving for something? The question was too personal, too knowing. Why do you care? Curiosity. I thought curiosity was dangerous, he smiled. Only if you're not careful with it. They sat in silence for a moment. The restaurant hummed around them, conversations, laughter, the clink of silverware. Normal sounds, safe sounds. I'm paying off student loans, she said finally. She didn't know why she told him. Maybe because he already seemed to know everything else. What did you study? Art history. Got 3/4 through my degree before I ran out of money. You going to finish it? Probably not. Turns out art history degrees don't pay back loans very efficiently. But you wanted to. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. She'd wanted to. Had loved it. The paintings, the sculpture, the way you could trace human hope and fear through centuries of created beauty. But wanting something didn't make it practical. What would you do with it? He asked. If you finished. I don't know. Museum work, maybe? Curation? Teaching? She shrugged. Doesn't matter now. It might. Before she could ask what that meant, another customer signaled for attention. She stood up, grateful for the interruption. I should go. Work. I'll order when you come back. She fled to the safety of other tables, other customers, other conversations that didn't feel like standing on a cliff edge. When she returned to take his order, he asked for the special and didn't try to make her sit again. But when he left, the tip he left was $500. She stared at the money, her heart racing. This wasn't generosity. This was something else. A message, maybe. Or a test. Marcus found her still staring at it. Holy shit. I can't accept this. The hell you can't. That's rent money. She didn't have words for what it was. Dangerous, complicated. A string attached to a debt she didn't want to owe. But Marcus was right. It was rent money. It was her car registration and her phone bill and groceries for a month. It was practical, necessary survival. She kept it. That night she lay in bed and wondered what she'd just accepted. He came back the next week. And the week after that. Always the same table. Always alone. Always asking her to sit, to talk, just for a few minutes. The conversations were strange, nothing too personal, nothing too revealing. He asked about her day, her opinions on the menu, what she thought of the new art installation in Millennium Park. It felt like he was studying her, learning her. She should have hated it, should have felt violated or manipulated. Instead, she felt seen. For the first time in years, someone was paying attention to her, not because she'd made a mistake, but because she was interesting. It was terrifying. You know he's dangerous, right? Jenna said over coffee in early May. They were at their usual spot, a tiny cafe that served mediocre lattes and excellent pastries. I know what he is. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're getting involved with a man who probably has a body count. I'm not involved. He's a customer. A customer who tips you $500 and asks about your dreams. Elara picked at her croissant. I don't know what he wants. Yes, you do. You're just scared to admit it. She was. Because what Dante Varelli seemed to want was impossible. To exist in both his world and hers. To be both the man who terrified his enemies and the one who asked gentle questions about art history over osso buco. People weren't that complicated. Were they? The next time he came in, she decided to find out. She sat across from him without being asked, folded her hands on the table, and met his eyes directly. Why do you keep coming here? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. The food's good. You own 20% of the restaurant. You could eat here for free any time. Why Tuesday nights at 8:30? Same table, same server? Maybe I like consistency. That's not an answer. He studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised her. He laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine, and it transformed his face completely. You're right, he said. It's not. He leaned back in the booth. The truth? You're the first person in a very long time who looks at me and doesn't immediately calculate what I can do for them or to them. I definitely calculate what you can do to me. But you're not scared of me anymore. She wanted to deny it, but he was right. The fear had faded into something else. Caution, maybe. Wariness. But not terror. Should I be? She asked. Probably. That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to be honest. He paused. I don't get to be honest very often. There was something in his voice. Loneliness, maybe, or exhaustion. The weight of being Dante Varelli, whatever that meant. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I don't know yet. He smiled slightly. Is that honest enough? It was. She brought him his scotch and took his order and didn't sit down again that night. But something had shifted between them. An acknowledgement. A door opening. Later, she'd wonder if she should have slammed it shut instead. May turned into June. The weather warmed. Chicago emerged from its winter cocoon, and the city came alive with festivals and tourists and the particular energy of summer starting. Dante kept coming. Not every week now, sometimes 2 weeks would pass, sometimes 3. But he always came back to table 7, always asked for her, always left tips that were generous but no longer shocking. They talked. About nothing important. About everything important. He asked about her life, and she asked carefully about his skirting around the parts that were too dangerous to know. He had a sister in Boston. He hated mushrooms. He'd lived in Chicago his whole life. She learned to read his moods, the tension in his shoulders when business was bad, the rare relaxation when things were going well. She learned that he drank scotch when he was working and red wine when he wasn't. She learned that he listened more than he spoke and noticed details most people missed. She also learned that people watched them. Not just at the restaurant, though Marcus had stopped questioning it and the other servers had stopped whispering, but outside. She'd catch men in dark cars parked across from her building, would notice the same faces in different places. Protection, probably. Or surveillance. "Am I being followed?" she asked him one night in late June. He didn't deny it. "Yes." "Why?" "Because people know I come here. People know you're—" He paused, choosing his word carefully. "Important to me. I serve you dinner." "Elara." He waited until she looked at him. "Don't insult either of our intelligence." Her hands started shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. "I didn't ask for this." "I know. I'm sorry." "Are you?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "Because it seems like you keep coming back, keep talking to me, keep pulling me into whatever this is, and I don't—" She stopped, trying to organize her thoughts. "I don't know the rules. I don't know what's safe. I don't know what happens if— If what? If this becomes something it shouldn't be." The air between them went electric. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. And what shouldn't it be? She couldn't say it, couldn't name the thing growing between them, the thing that felt like interest and attraction and danger, all twisted together. "I should get back to work," she whispered. "Elara, please." He let her go. But that night, when she left the restaurant, a different car followed her home. Nicer, closer. It parked outside her building and stayed there all night. In the morning, it was gone. Well, the breaking point came in July. She was closing the restaurant late on a Saturday night, the last server to leave. Marcus had already gone home. The kitchen staff were finishing cleanup. She was counting her tips in the back office when she heard raised voices from the front. Through the office door, she could see two men she didn't recognize arguing with Tommy, the night manager. One of them was holding something, a crowbar maybe, or a pipe. Tommy's face was white. Every instinct told her to stay hidden, lock the door, call the police, wait for it to be over. Instead, she thought about the panic button under the host stand, the one connected directly to the security company. She could reach it if she moved fast. She was halfway across the dining room when one of the men saw her. "Hey!" She ran, made it to the host stand, slammed her hand on the button, and heard the satisfying beep of the alarm activating. Then a hand grabbed her arm and yanked her backward. "You stupid bitch!" The front door exploded inward. Later, she wouldn't remember the details clearly, just impressions. Men in dark suits moving with military precision, the sound of breaking bone, someone screaming. The hand on her arm released. She stumbled backward into a table, knocked over a vase. And then Dante was there, his hands on her shoulders, his face inches from hers. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, mute. "Look at me. Elara, look at me. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." He pulled her against his chest, one hand in her hair, and she felt him shaking. Or maybe that was her. She couldn't tell where she ended and he began. "It's okay," he said into her hair. "You're okay. I've got you." Behind him, his men were dragging the two intruders toward the back exit. Tommy was on the phone with the police. The world was chaos. But in Dante's arms, pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, she felt safe. That's when she knew she was in real trouble. Because safety wasn't something you felt with dangerous men. Safety was an illusion, a lie you told yourself before everything fell apart. And Elara Quinn had just started believing it anyway. The police came and went. They took statements, photographed the broken door, talked to Tommy in low voices that suggested they already knew who was responsible for the cleanup. Not the attack, the cleanup. One officer recognized Dante and suddenly became very interested in his notepad. Elara sat in the back office with a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders, watching through the window as Dante spoke to a detective. His posture was relaxed, his voice calm. Like this was a minor inconvenience rather than whatever it actually was. "You should go home," Marcus said, appearing in the doorway. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "I'll handle the rest of this." What were they here for? Does it matter? Yes. He sighed and sat down across from her. Message delivery. Wrong place, wrong night. They thought... He stopped, rubbed his face. They thought hitting Varelli's place would make a point to someone else. This is his place? 20%, like he told you, but everyone knows it's his. Has been for years. Marcus looked at her carefully. You really didn't know? She'd known he had investment, hadn't realized it meant ownership, hadn't understood that working here meant working for him, in a way. That every shift, every table, every conversation had been happening in his territory. I need to go home, she said quietly. I'll call you a cab. I have my car. Your hands are shaking. You're not driving. She looked down. He was right. Her whole body was trembling like a fault line before an earthquake. The cab ride home was a blur. She climbed the stairs to her apartment on autopilot, unlocked her door, and stood in the middle of her small living space trying to remember what normal felt like. The silence was oppressive. She turned on the TV just for noise, then turned it off again. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? It's Dante. Of course it was. How did you get my number? Are you alone? Yes. Lock your door, double lock. There's a man outside your building. His name is Marco. He's there all night. If you need anything at all, you call me. Understand? I'm fine. Alara. His voice was tight. Those men came looking for me. They didn't expect anyone to be there. You could have been... He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled. Just lock your door, please. Okay. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up before she could respond. She checked the locks twice, then went to her window and looked down at the street. Sure enough, there was a dark sedan parked across the street, someone visible in the driver's seat, protecting her, or watching her. Maybe both. Sleep didn't come. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. The fear in Tommy's face, the sound of the door breaking, Dante's hands on her shoulders, his voice in her ear saying, I've got you, like it was a promise. When dawn finally came, she felt hollow and strange. Her phone rang at 9 a.m. Dante again. Did you sleep? No. Neither did I. A pause. I'm sending a car for you at noon. We need to talk. I have to work tonight. I called Marcus. You have the weekend off. The presumption should have made her angry. Instead, she felt relieved. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. Pack a bag, 2 days' worth. Dante, please, just trust me. She wanted to say no. Wanted to establish boundaries, maintain control, protect herself. But the truth was she didn't feel safe in her apartment anymore. Didn't feel safe anywhere except with him. Which was the most dangerous thought of all. Okay, she whispered. The car arrived exactly at noon. Not Marco this time. A driver in a black suit who introduced himself as Vincent and took her bag without comment. The car was expensive, leather seats and tinted windows. She watched Chicago slide past, heading north toward the lake. They drove for 40 minutes before pulling up to a building she recognized, a luxury high-rise in the Gold Coast, the kind of place with doormen and security and price tags that made her yearly salary look like pocket change. Vincent led her to a private elevator that required a key card. They rode to the top floor in silence. The doors opened directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment, an entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, furniture that looked like it came from magazines, art on the walls that was probably real. The space was modern and cold and beautiful. Dante was standing by the window, phone to his ear. He looked up when she entered, said something quick in Italian, and hung up. You came. You didn't really give me a choice. You always have a choice. He gestured to the sofa. Sit. Are you hungry? No, I want to know what's going on. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Whiskey, probably, though it was barely past noon. The men last night worked for the Castellano family. You remember that name? She did. From that first dinner in the private room, the name that had been mentioned with distaste. They were sending a message, Dante continued. They thought the restaurant would be empty. They were wrong. A message about what? Territory, money, The usual stupid reasons men kill each other. He took a drink. It doesn't matter. What matters is you were there. You saw their faces. That makes you a liability. The word landed like a stone. A liability to who? To them? To me? To everyone? He turned to face her fully. Castellano doesn't know who you are yet, but he will. These things get around, and when he finds out there was a witness, the police have their names. The police don't matter. What matters is that you're connected to me now, whether we want it or not, and that makes you a target. She felt the air leave her lungs. So what are you saying? I need to disappear? Leave Chicago? No, you need to stay here. In your apartment? For now, until I handle this. Handle it how? His expression went flat. You don't want to know. She stood up, anger finally cutting through the fear. Don't do that. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I'm not a child. I know exactly what you are. Then stop protecting me from information. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why and how and what happens next. They stared at each other across the expensive room. Outside, the lake was calm and blue and indifferent to human problems. Castellano wants me out of the import business, Dante said finally. I told him no. So he's been pushing, hitting my operations, bribing my contacts, spreading rumors. Last night was escalation. He wanted to destroy something I own. Why? Because I won't bend. Because I'm in his way. Because in this business, weakness gets you killed. He set down his glass. I'm going to meet with him tomorrow. We're going to reach an understanding. An understanding. Yes. Is that code for something? It's code for, I'm going to make it very clear that touching my businesses or my people is a death sentence. His voice was cold now, the warmth she was used to completely gone. This was the other Dante, the one other people feared. He'll agree, or he won't. Either way, it ends. And me? You stay here. You stay safe. And when it's over, you go back to your life. Just like that. Just like that. She laughed, and it sounded bitter even to her own ears. You really think I can just go back to serving dinner and pretending none of this happened? That I can forget men with crowbars and security details and... She gestured around the apartment. All of this? What's the alternative? I don't know. Maybe tell me the truth. Maybe stop making decisions for me like I'm some chess piece you're moving around. I'm trying to keep you alive. Why? The question exploded out of her. Why do you care? I'm nobody. I'm a waitress who dropped a bottle of wine. Why does any of this matter to you? He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. For a second, she thought he might grab her, might shake her. Instead, he stopped just short of touching, his hands clenched at his sides. Because you looked at me like I was human, he said, voice rough. Because you sat across from me and talked about art and dreams and stupid things that had nothing to do with money or power. Because for 2 hours a week, I got to be someone other than this. He gestured at himself, at the apartment, at the life he'd built. And I'm not ready to lose that yet. The honesty of it hit her like a physical blow. Dante, stay here, please. 2 days. Let me fix this, and then you can decide if you want to go back to pretending you don't know me. Is that what we've been doing? Pretending? His jaw tightened. I don't know what we've been doing. Neither did she. But standing this close to him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes and the tension in his shoulders, she realized something that terrified her. She didn't want to leave. Didn't want to go back to her small apartment and her small life and pretend that these months hadn't changed everything. Okay, she said quietly. 2 days. Some of the tension left his body. Thank you. But I want the truth. No more protecting me from information. Some truths are dangerous. I don't care. If I'm staying in your world, even for 2 days, I need to understand it. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, truth. He stepped back, putting distance between them. I run logistics, shipping mostly. Some of it legal, some of it not. I move things that people want moved without questions asked. What kind of things? Everything. Art sometimes, medicine, weapons, whatever pays. That's vague. It's intentional. He refilled his drink. The less you know specifically, the safer you are. Safe from what? The police? From having to testify. from becoming leverage, from being the person someone kidnaps to get to me. He saw her expression and his voice softened. This is why I didn't want to tell you. I asked. I know. She sat down on the sofa, trying to process it all. She'd known, theoretically, that Dante was involved in crime, but hearing it stated plainly, weapons, illegal shipping, a whole underground network, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Do you kill people? The question came out before she could stop it. Sometimes. No hesitation, no justification. Just the truth. Does it bother you? Used to. He looked out at the lake. Not anymore. That should probably scare you more than anything else I've told you. It should have. But what scared her more was how little it changed her feelings. She should be running, should be calling the police or a cab or anyone who could get her away from this man and his dangerous life. Instead, she said, "Show me the rest of the apartment." He blinked, surprised. What? If I'm staying here for 2 days, I'd like to know where things are. Something that might have been relief crossed his face. Okay, this way. The apartment was huge. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than her entire studio. He showed her the guest room where she'd sleep, pointed out the gym and the office and the library. Everything was tasteful and expensive and somehow impersonal, like a hotel suite designed to look lived in. You don't actually live here, do you? She said, running her hand along a bookshelf filled with books that looked unread. Not really. I have another place. Smaller. This is for... He trailed off. For showing people how successful you are? Something like that. Do you even like it? He looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. No, not particularly. Then why keep it? Because it's expected. Because it sends a message. He met her eyes. Because sometimes the performance is more important than the truth. She thought about her own performance, the invisible waitress, the perfect smile, the woman who never made waves. They weren't so different, really, both hiding who they were behind carefully constructed facades. I'm going to order food, Dante said. Ty okay? Sure. He made the call while she explored the guest room. It was beautiful, king-sized bed, more windows, an attached bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Her overnight bag looked pathetic sitting on the pristine white bedspread. When she came back out, Dante was sitting on the sofa with his phone, scrolling through messages. He looked tired. When's the meeting with Castellano? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Where? Neutral ground, a restaurant downtown that neither of us owns. Will there be... She didn't know how to phrase it. Violence? Not there. Too public. He set down his phone. But after, depending on how it goes, maybe. And you'll just go handle it. That's the job. She sat down on the opposite end of the sofa. Doesn't it get exhausting, being responsible for everything? Every day. Then why do it? Because I'm good at it. Because people depend on me. Because walking away means someone worse takes over. He rubbed his eyes. And because I don't know how to be anything else. The food arrived 40 minutes later. Enough Thai food for 6 people, delivered by someone who definitely wasn't from the restaurant. They ate at the dining table with Chicago spreading out below them. And for a while it felt almost normal. Just 2 people sharing dinner. Tell me about art, Dante said, refilling her water glass. What about it? Whatever you want. You studied it. You loved it. Tell me why. So she did. Talked about the first time she'd seen a Rothko and felt like crying. The way Renaissance paintings could capture hope and despair in the same brushstroke. How sculpture was frozen motion, forever caught between one moment and the next. He listened without interrupting, his attention absolute. When she finally ran out of words, he was smiling. What? She asked. You light up when you talk about it. Your whole face changes. She felt herself blush. It's stupid, impractical. It's not stupid, it's passion. That's rare. You're passionate about logistics? I used to be, long time ago. He pushed food around his plate. Now it's just work. What were you passionate about before? Music. Piano, specifically. I was good too. Could have been better if I'd kept at it. Why didn't you? Life got in the way. My father died. I had to take over the business, and suddenly there wasn't time for things that didn't generate money or power. He shrugged. That's how it goes. Do you still play? Haven't touched a piano in 15 years. She wanted to say that was sad, that he should make time, that passion was worth protecting, but she'd given up art school for the same practical reasons, so who was she to judge? They cleaned up together, a strange domesticity to washing dishes and putting away leftovers. Then Dante excused himself to make phone calls, and Alara found herself alone in the enormous apartment. She wandered, examining the art on the walls. Most of it was modern and expensive looking, the kind of pieces bought for investment rather than love. But in the hallway near the office, she found something different. A small landscape, maybe 10 inches square, that actually had character. A forest at dawn, mist rising through trees. That was my mother's. She turned. Dante had emerged from the office, jacket off and tie loosened. It's beautiful. She painted it, one of the few things I kept after she died. I didn't know she painted. Most people didn't. She thought it was frivolous. He came to stand beside her. But she did it anyway, early mornings before anyone else was awake, just her and the canvas. How old were you when she died? 17. I'm sorry. Long time ago. But the way he looked at the painting suggested it wasn't that long ago at all. Just buried deep, the way pain gets buried when you can't afford to feel it. My father died when I was 12, Alara said quietly. Heart attack. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. I'm sorry. Long time ago, she echoed. They stood in silence, looking at the small painting of trees and mist and morning light. You should go to bed, Dante said eventually. It's late. It was barely 9, but she was exhausted. The adrenaline of the previous night had finally worn off, leaving her wrung out and empty. What about you? I have work to do, planning for tomorrow. Dante? I'll be fine. Sleep. I'll be here if you need anything. She wanted to argue, wanted to stay up and keep him company through whatever dark planning he was doing, but her body was demanding rest. Good night, she said. Good night, Alara. She went to the guest room, changed into pajamas, and climbed into the enormous bed. The sheets were soft and expensive and smelled like laundry detergent. Through the walls, she could hear Dante's voice, muffled but steady, speaking Italian to someone on the phone. She didn't mean to fall asleep. But exhaustion pulled her under, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't dream. When she woke, pale sunlight was streaming through the windows, and the smell of coffee was drifting through the apartment. She checked her phone. 10 a.m. She'd slept for 13 hours. Dante was in the kitchen, dressed in slacks and a white shirt, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she appeared. Coffee? Please. He poured her a cup, added cream without asking because apparently he'd noticed how she took it. She accepted it gratefully and sat at the kitchen island. How are you feeling? He asked. Tired? Strange. Like I'm living in someone else's life. That's fair. He set down his tablet. I'm leaving at 1. The meeting's at 2. How long will you be gone? Hard to say. Few hours, probably. And if it doesn't go well? Then longer, maybe overnight. He caught her expression. Marco will be here. He'll stay in the apartment while I'm gone. You won't be alone. I wasn't worried about being alone. What were you worried about? You, she wanted to say. I'm worried about you walking into a meeting with a man who sent people to trash your restaurant and not coming back. Nothing, she said instead. I'll be fine. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. They had breakfast together, eggs and toast that Dante made with surprising competence, and talked about nothing important, the weather, the news, anything but what was coming. At 12:30, he went to change. When he came back out, he was in a full suit, charcoal, with a dark blue tie. He looked like money and power and danger all wrapped together. How do I look? There was a hint of humor in his voice. Terrifying. Good. He checked his watch. Remember, Marco's outside. Don't open the door for anyone else. There's food in the kitchen, books in the library, and the TV works if you can figure out the remote. I'll survive a few hours alone. I know. He hesitated, then crossed to her and pulled her into a hug. It was brief and tight and completely unexpected. Thank you, he said into her hair. For what? For trusting me. He let go before she could respond and headed for the door. She watched him leave, watched the elevator doors close, and then she was alone in the silent apartment with nothing to do but wait and worry. The first hour passed slowly. She tried reading, tried TV, tried pacing. None of it helped. The city stretched out below her, indifferent and busy, and somewhere out there Dante was sitting across from a man who wanted him gone. Marco appeared at 2, letting himself in with a key card. He was the same man who'd walked her to her car that first night. Scar through his eyebrow, calm expression. "Miss Quinn." "Just Ilara is fine." "Ilara, I'll be in the living room if you need anything, otherwise I won't bother you." He settled onto the sofa with a book. Actual physical book, not a phone, and proceeded to read like he was in a library instead of babysitting a waitress in his boss's apartment. Another hour passed, then another. Ilara tried to sketch. She'd brought a small pad out of habit, but her hands wouldn't cooperate. Every line came out wrong. At 5 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? It's me." Dante's voice was tight. "Change your plans. I need you to pack your bag." Her stomach dropped. "Why? What happened?" "Meeting went fine. But Castellano knows about you, has your name, your address, everything. It's not safe for you to go back to your apartment." "For how long?" "I don't know. Weeks, maybe. I'm working on it, but until then, I can't just disappear for weeks, Dante. I have a job, a life. I know. I'm sorry, but this is the situation." She wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone across the room and break something. Instead, she took a breath and tried to think practically. "Where am I supposed to stay?" "With me. My actual place, not this one. It's secure." "For weeks. Until it's safe. I'll pay you what you'd make at the restaurant. More, whatever you need." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" The truth was, she didn't know. She wanted her life back. Wanted to rewind to 6 months ago when the worst thing she had to worry about was student loans and bad tippers. But that life was gone, shattered like the wine bottle that had started all of this. "I want to feel like I have some control," she said finally. "Okay, what would that look like?" "I don't know. Let me think about it." "Take your time. I'll be back in an hour. We'll figure it out together." He hung up, and Ilara stood in the middle of the expensive apartment, wondering how her life had become something that needed figuring out. Marco appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" Define okay. He almost smiled. "Fair point. You want something to drink? I make a decent vodka tonic." It's 5 p.m. on a Sunday. "And you just found out your life's on hold indefinitely. Seems like vodka tonic time to me." She laughed despite everything. "Okay, yeah. Why not?" He made the drinks with practiced efficiency, and they sat together in the living room watching the sun start its descent toward the lake. The vodka burned and settled and made the edges of panic softer. "How long have you worked for him?" Ilara asked. 10 years, since I was 23. "Do you like it?" Marco considered the question seriously. "Most days. He's fair, pays well. Doesn't ask you to do things that'll get you killed unless there's no other option." "That's a pretty low bar. You'd be surprised how many bosses can't clear it." He took a sip of his drink. "He's different with you, you know." "Different how?" "Lighter, less carved out of stone." Marco met her eyes. "I've worked for him a decade, and I've never seen him bring someone here. Never seen him care if someone was scared or safe or needed looking after. That's new." "I don't know if that's good or bad. Neither does he, I think. That's what makes it interesting." When Dante came back at 6, Ilara had finished her drink and come to a decision. She met him at the door. "I'll stay with you, but I need things. Name them. I need to be able to go outside. I can't be locked in an apartment for weeks." "Okay. With security, but okay. I need something to do, work or projects or something. I'll go crazy just sitting around." "We'll figure it out. And I need honesty. No more protecting me from information. If something's happening, if I'm in danger, I need to know." He hesitated on that one. She could see him calculating, weighing truth against safety. "Please," she said. "I need to feel like a person, not a possession you're keeping safe." That hit something. His expression shifted, and he nodded. "Okay, honesty. I'll try. That's all I'm asking." He smiled, tired but real. "Then let's go home." Home. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. They took the elevator down together, walked to a different car with a different driver. Marco followed in a second vehicle. The sun was setting, painting Chicago in gold and shadow, and Alara watched it pass by and wondered what home looked like in Dante Varelli's world. She was about to find out. Dante's real home was in Lincoln Park, tucked behind iron gates and old oak trees that made the neighborhood feel like a different century. The building itself was brownstone, elegant without being ostentatious, the kind of place that whispered old money instead of screaming it. They pulled into an underground garage, and Alara followed him to a private entrance that led directly to his floor. No lobby, no neighbors, no witnesses. The apartment was nothing like the Gold Coast showpiece. It was smaller, warmer, actually lived in. Books on shelves that looked red, jackets tossed over chairs, coffee cups in the sink. The furniture was comfortable rather than impressive, and the art on the walls was eclectic, some valuable, some clearly just things he liked. "Second bedroom's down the hall," Dante said, carrying her bag. "Bathroom's shared, sorry. I wasn't exactly planning for company." "It's fine." She followed him, taking in details. Photos on a side table, a younger Dante with a woman who must have been his mother, another of him with a girl around 12 who had his eyes. The sister in Boston, probably. He set her bag on the bed in the guest room. "I'm usually up by 6. I try to be quiet, but the coffee maker's loud. I'm a light sleeper anyway." "Good to know." He lingered in the doorway, looking uncertain. It was strange seeing him like this, the man who commanded rooms full of dangerous people suddenly awkward about having a house guest. "There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. And if you need—" "Dante." She cut him off gently. "I'll be fine. You don't have to manage me." "Right. Sorry." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Having someone here. In my space." He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "It's been a long time." "How long?" 5 years, maybe? Since anyone stayed over who wasn't family or business. 5 years. The number settled between them with weight. 5 years of coming home to empty rooms, of eating alone, of building walls so high that even the people closest to him couldn't quite reach. "Well, I'm here now," Alara said, "and I promise not to reorganize your kitchen or judge your book collection." That got a small smile. "My book collection is excellent. We'll see about that." He left her to unpack, and she took her time arranging her few belongings in the unfamiliar space. 2 days' worth of clothes, toiletries, her sketch pad. It looked pathetic spread out in the dresser, evidence of a life that could be condensed into a single bag. When she emerged, Dante was in the kitchen opening a bottle of wine. He'd changed into jeans and a t-shirt, and the casual clothes made him look younger, less armored. "Red okay?" he asked. "Perfect." They settled on the sofa with their glasses, and for a while neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just full of things neither knew how to say. "Tell me about the meeting," Alara said finally. Dante took a drink first, buying time. "Castellanos backed off. For now. I made it clear that any further moves against me or mine would end badly for him." "How clear?" "Very. I may have mentioned that I know where his daughter goes to school." Alara's stomach turned. "You wouldn't?" "Of course not. But he doesn't know that." Dante's voice was flat. "That's how this works. You find the pressure points and you press until someone breaks." "And he broke?" "He agreed to a ceasefire. Whether it holds depends on how desperate he gets." He refilled his glass. "But he knows about you now. Knows you were at the restaurant. Knows you're connected to me. That's why you can't go home." "For how long?" "Until I make the threat to you irrelevant." "And how do you do that?" He looked at her directly. "You really want to know?" She thought about it. Thought about the line she was crossing by asking, by staying here, by being part of this. "Yes. I make it clear that you're under my protection, that touching you means war. I make you too expensive to use as leverage." He paused. "And if anyone's stupid enough to try anyway, I make an example of them that ensures no one else gets the same idea." The casual way he said it, like he was discussing a business strategy rather than potential murder, should have horrified her. Maybe it did, but there was also something else, something she didn't want to examine too closely. Relief, maybe. The knowledge that someone would go to war for her safety. Does it bother you? She asked quietly. Being this person? Every day, but not enough to stop. Why not? But because if I stop, someone worse takes my place, and because I'm good at it, and because he stopped, staring into his wine like it held answers. Because I don't know who I'd be without it anymore. Alara wanted to say he could be anything, could walk away, start over, become someone new, but she'd given up art school for practical reasons, had buried her own dreams under the weight of survival. Who was she to tell him to abandon the life he'd built? Tell me something true, she said instead. Something you don't tell other people. He raised an eyebrow. Isn't that what we've been doing? Something lighter, a secret that doesn't involve violence or danger. He considered this, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I'm scared of dogs. What? Dogs? Terrified. Have been since I was 8 and a neighbor's German shepherd cornered me in an alley. He laughed at her expression. I know. Dante Varelli, feared by men throughout Chicago, runs from golden retrievers. That's... She started to laugh and couldn't stop. The absurdity of it, the humanness, the image of this dangerous man crossing the street to avoid a poodle. That's amazing. Your turn. Tell me something true. I wanted to be a museum curator. Not just work at a museum, run one. I had this whole fantasy of designing exhibits, bringing in new artists, making art accessible to people who thought museums were just for rich people who understood wine. The words came easier than she'd expected. I was going to change the whole system from the inside. Why didn't you? Because dreams don't pay bills. Because my dad died and left debt, and I had to be practical. She took a drink. Because I was scared I wasn't good enough. That's not true. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've watched you talk about art. You light up like someone who's found their purpose. That's not someone who isn't good enough. That's someone who gave up too soon. The words hit harder than she expected. She blinked back sudden tears and changed the subject before he could see them. What's your sister's name? Sophia. She's a pediatric surgeon in Boston. Brilliant, stubborn, refuses to have anything to do with the family business. Smart woman. The smartest. She tried to get me out too, back when I was younger. Offered to help me go to college, get legitimate work. His smile was sad. I said no. Why? Because my father had just died and someone needed to hold things together. Because I was good at it. Because... He stopped. Because I was 22 and stupid and thought I could do both. Build the business and keep my hands clean. And you couldn't. No. You can't be halfway in this world. Either you're all in or you're dead. They drank in silence for a while, the weight of choices made and paths not taken filling the space between them. I should make dinner, Dante said eventually. You like pasta. I like anything I don't have to cook. He laughed and stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, you can help. The kitchen was small and efficient, clearly designed by someone who actually used it. Dante moved through it with the same competence he brought to everything else, pulling out ingredients and setting Alara to chopping vegetables while he started the sauce. Where'd you learn to cook? She asked, dicing tomatoes. My mother. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was useless. He added garlic to the pan, and the smell filled the kitchen. She died before she could see what I became. Sometimes I'm grateful for that. She'd probably be proud. You're successful. You protect people. I kill people, Alara. I run an illegal empire. I'm exactly what she didn't want me to be. His voice was harsh. Let's not pretend otherwise. She set down the knife. I'm not pretending. I know what you are. But you're also the person who makes sure his employees get home safe, who tips waitresses more than they make in a week, who keeps his mother's painting on the wall. She met his eyes. People aren't just one thing. You're trying to find good in me. I'm trying to see all of you. He stared at her across the kitchen, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he crossed to her in 2 strides and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and rough, and tasted like wine and want, and all the things they'd been dancing around for months. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped his shirt, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to the point where they connected. Then he pulled back, breathing hard. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... She pulled him back down and kissed him again. This time it was slower, deeper, a A question and an answer all at once. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. Elara, don't. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't apologize. Don't analyze it. Don't tell me all the reasons this is a bad idea. It is a bad idea. I know. I don't care. You should. But his hands were still on her waist, holding her close. I'm dangerous. My life is dangerous. Being with me puts a target on your back. There's already a target on my back. That's why I'm here, remember? That's temporary. He gestured between them. This makes it permanent. Maybe I want permanent. The words surprised her as much as him, but saying them out loud, she realized they were true. She was tired of being invisible, of playing it safe, of building a life so small that nothing could hurt her. Maybe I'm tired of being scared. You should be scared. Of me, of this, of everything I come with. Probably, but I'm not. She framed his face with her hands. I see you, Dante. Not the crime boss, not the dangerous man everyone fears. You. And I'm not running. You might, when you really understand what being with me means. Then let me understand. Show me. But stop making decisions for me. They stood there in the kitchen with the sauce simmering on the stove and the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Then Dante kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise or a warning, or both. Okay, he said against her mouth. But don't say I didn't warn you. Warning noted. They finished making dinner, and the air between them was charged with new electricity. Every accidental touch felt intentional. Every glance held weight. They ate at the small kitchen table, knees bumping underneath, and talked about nothing important while everything important hung unsaid between them. After dinner, Dante had calls to make, business that couldn't wait, arrangements to ensure Alara's safety, the endless management of an empire built on sand. She curled up on the sofa with a book from his shelf and tried to read while listening to his voice drift from the office, switching between English and Italian depending on who he was talking to. It was almost midnight when he finally emerged, loosening his tie with tired hands. Sorry, that took longer than expected. It's fine. I'm not going anywhere. He sat down beside her, close enough that their legs touched. What are you reading? She showed him the cover, a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Good choice. Revenge and redemption. He smiled slightly. Appropriate. Which are you after? Revenge or redemption? I don't think I get either. I think I just get survival. She set the book aside and leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. He stiffened for a second, then relaxed, his arm coming around her. This is nice, she said quietly. It is. When's the last time you just sat with someone? I don't know. Years, probably. They sat like that until Alara's eyes started to close, the exhaustion of the last few days finally catching up with her. Dante shifted and she felt him lift her easily. I can walk, she protested. I know. Humor me. He carried her to the guest room and set her on the bed like she was something fragile. She caught his hand before he could leave. Stay. Alara, just until I fall asleep, please. He hesitated, then nodded and lay down beside her on top of the covers. She curled against his side and his hand found her hair, fingers running through it in a rhythm that was probably unconscious. This is dangerous, he said quietly. I know. I'm going to hurt you, eventually. People like me always do. Maybe. Or maybe you're not giving yourself enough credit. You have too much faith in me. Someone should. She felt him press a kiss to the top of her head, and then sleep pulled her under. When she woke in the morning, he was gone. But there was coffee in the kitchen and a note in sharp handwriting. Had to go out, back by noon. Marco's outside if you need anything. D. She smiled and poured herself coffee, then spent the morning exploring the apartment more thoroughly. The books were eclectic. Literary fiction next to crime novels, next to philosophy. The music collection was extensive. Everything from classical to jazz to what looked like every blues album ever recorded. And in the office, she found the piano. It was a small upright, probably older than she was, pushed against the wall like an afterthought. The keys were dusty. She sat down and picked out a simple melody, something half remembered from childhood piano lessons. The sound was tinny and slightly out of tune, but it filled the space with something other than silence. I thought you didn't play. She jumped and spun around. Dante was in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I don't. Not really. Just a few years as a kid. She stood up quickly. Sorry, I was snooping. It's fine, I forgot this was even here. You should get it tuned. Why? I don't use it. But you could. She ran her fingers over the dusty wood. You said you were good once. That was a lifetime ago. So was art school for me. Doesn't mean it's gone. She met his eyes. Play something. Ilara say, please. I told you about my dreams. Show me one of yours. He stared at the piano like it was a trap. Then slowly he crossed to it and sat down. His hands hovered over the keys for a long moment before he started to play. It was Chopin, she thought, something melancholy and beautiful that filled the apartment with aching sound. His hands moved with muscle memory, stumbling occasionally, but mostly sure, and the music was raw and unpracticed and absolutely real. When he finished, silence filled the space. He kept his hands on the keys, head bowed. That was beautiful, Ilara said quietly. That was rusty. It was honest. She came to stand beside him. You should play more. There's no time. Make time. Even criminals get hobbies. That startled a laugh out of him. Criminals get hobbies? Why not? Even people doing terrible things need beauty in their lives. Maybe especially them. He pulled her down onto the bench beside him and kissed her, slow and sweet. You're going to ruin me. Good. You could use some ruining. They spent the afternoon together, and it felt like playing house, making lunch, watching TV, existing in the same space without agenda. Marco appeared briefly to deliver groceries and updates, then disappeared again. The world outside continued its dangerous turning, but inside Dante's apartment, time felt suspended. I need to tell you something, Dante said that evening. They were sitting on the sofa again, her feet in his lap while he absent-mindedly rubbed them. Okay, tomorrow I'm meeting with my people, all of them. I need to make it official that you're under protection. What does that mean exactly? It means they all know your face, your name, your status. It means anyone in my organization will die before they let someone hurt you. And it means anyone outside my organization who tries faces consequences. He met her eyes. It means you're mine, in the eyes of everyone who matters. The possessiveness in that last word should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat through her whole body. And what do I have to do? Just be there. Meet people. Let them see you're real. Will they hate me? Some will think I'm weak for having you. Others will think it's a smart move. Humanizes me. Makes me less of a monster. He shrugged. Most won't care as long as it doesn't affect business. Which camp are you in? I think I stopped caring what anyone thinks about 2 minutes after I met you. She shifted to straddle his lap, her hands on his shoulders. That's a pretty specific timeline. I'm a detail-oriented person. His hands found her waist. 2 minutes in, you looked at me like I was just another customer. Not a threat, not an opportunity. Just a man. I'd forgotten what that felt like. And now? Now I'm terrified I'm going to lose it. His grip tightened. Lose you. You won't. You don't know that. You don't know what's coming. Then tell me. She leaned in until their foreheads touched. Tell me what I should be scared of. Everything. Me, my enemies, the life I live. The fact that being with me means you'll never be completely safe again. The fact that I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. That's not you being selfish. That's me making my own decisions. You're making them without all the information. Then give me the information. Stop protecting me from the truth. He searched her face for a long moment. Then he shifted her off his lap and stood up, running his hands through his hair. 3 years ago, I was with someone. Her name was Maria. She was smart, beautiful, completely separate from my world. A lawyer, corporate stuff, nothing criminal. I thought I could keep her separate. Thought if I was careful, she'd never be part of the danger. Ilara's stomach dropped. What happened? One of my rivals found out about her, grabbed her outside her office, held her for 3 days while they negotiated. His voice was flat, controlled. By the time I found her, she wasn't the same. What they did to her, the things they made her endure just to prove a point to me. He stopped, jaw working. She survived, physically, but she couldn't look at me after. Couldn't be in the same room. Every time she saw me, she saw the men who'd hurt her. Dante. She left the city, changed her name. Last I heard, she was in Seattle, married to a dentist or something. Safe, normal. Everything she should have been before I dragged her into hell. He turned to face her. That's what happens to people who get close to me. That's the information you need to make your decision. Alara stood up slowly, processing. Did you find the people who took her? Yes. And? And they don't exist anymore. Neither do their families, their associates, anyone who knew about it and didn't stop it. His eyes were dark. I salted the earth, Alara, made it so complete that even mentioning their names is considered bad luck. She should be horrified, should be running for the door, calling the police, getting as far from this man and his capacity for violence as possible. Instead, she crossed to him and took his hands. I'm not her. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I'm not separate from your world anymore. I'm already in it. The threat exists whether I'm with you or not. At least this way I have you protecting me instead of just guards I don't know. That's not better. That's just a different kind of danger. Maybe. But it's my choice. She squeezed his hands. You told me what happened. You tried to scare me off. And I'm still here. So either accept that I'm making this decision with eyes open or tell me to leave. I can't tell you to leave. Then stop trying to make me go. He pulled her against him, holding her so tight it almost hurt. She felt him shaking, felt the fear and need and desperate hope radiating off him. If something happens to you because of me, then we'll deal with it. Together. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Dante. You're stuck with me. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, and the day after. For as long as you'll listen. He kissed her then, hard and deep and full of everything he couldn't say. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavy, he rested his forehead against hers. The meeting tomorrow. You sure you're ready? No, but I'll do it anyway. That's my girl. The possessiveness in his voice made her shiver. She was his girl now, apparently. Part of his world, his organization, his life. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. They spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in each other, talking and kissing and existing in the small bubble they'd created. When Alara finally went to bed, alone, because Dante had work calls that would keep him up late, she lay in the dark and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Meeting his people, being presented as his, stepping fully into a world she'd only glimpsed from the edges. It should have felt like a mistake, like she was throwing her life away for a man she barely knew, a criminal, someone who'd admitted to killing without remorse. But lying there in his guest room, listening to his voice drift through the walls as he conducted business in Italian, all she felt was certainty. This was where she was supposed to be, with him in this life, even if it killed her. Maybe especially then. Morning came too fast. Alara woke to the sound of the shower running and lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she could fake sick. Then she remembered she was already living in Dante's apartment under protection from men who wanted to use her as leverage, and laughed at the absurdity of thinking a headache would get her out of anything. She got up and dressed carefully, choosing dark jeans and a simple black sweater. Nothing too flashy, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." She wanted to blend in, to be unremarkable. When she emerged, Dante was already in the kitchen, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her car. He looked up from his coffee, and his eyes traveled over her slowly. You look nervous. I am nervous. Don't be. These are my people. They'll respect you because I do. And if they don't, then they won't be my people anymore. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather instead of potential violence. Come here. She crossed to him and he pulled her close, one hand cupping her face. Listen to me. You walk in there like you belong. You don't apologize. You don't shrink. You don't act like you're asking permission to exist in my world. You're with me. That makes you untouchable. Understand? Fake it till I make it? Exactly. He kissed her forehead. You'll be fine. I'll be right there. They left at 10. Marco drove them to a warehouse in the industrial district. The kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside but probably housed millions in illegal goods. Two men flanked the entrance and they straightened when they saw Dante's car approach. Showtime, Dante murmured. The warehouse interior had been converted into something between an office and a social club. There were desks along one wall, a full bar along another, and in the center, a large conference table surrounded by chairs. About 20 people were already there, standing in small groups, talking in low voices. Every conversation stopped when Dante walked in with Alara's hand in his. She felt the weight of their stares, the assessment, the calculation. Some faces were curious, some skeptical, a few openly hostile. She wanted to look down, to hide, to be invisible the way she'd trained herself to be for years. Instead, she lifted her chin and met their eyes. Dante led her to the head of the table, and she stood beside him, hyper-aware of every breath, every movement. "Most of you know why we're here," Dante said, his voice carrying easily through the space. "But I'm going to make it official anyway. This is Alara Quinn. As of today, she's under my direct protection. That means she's off limits to everyone, enemies, allies, anyone who values their life." A man near the back spoke up. "With all due respect, boss, is this smart? After what happened to—" "Don't!" Dante's voice went cold. "Don't finish that sentence." The man went pale and shut his mouth. "I know the risks," Dante continued. "I'm taking them anyway. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. No hard feelings. But if you stay, you accept this. She's mine, and that means she's protected by all of you." Silence. Then a woman near the front, dark-haired and sharp-eyed, stepped forward. "Does she know what she's getting into?" "Elena," Dante started. "No, I want to hear it from her." The woman looked at Alara directly. "Do you understand what being his means? The danger, the violence, the fact that you'll always be looking over your shoulder?" Alara's heart was hammering, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand." "Do you? Because we've seen what happens to people who think they can handle this life and can't. It's not pretty." "Elena, that's enough," Dante said. "No, she has a right to ask." Alara stepped forward slightly, out of Dante's shadow. "I know what happened before. He told me. And yes, I understand the risks. But I'm not walking into this blind. I'm choosing it, choosing him. And if that makes me stupid or naive, fine. But it's my choice to make." Elena studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." She looked at Dante. "She's got spine. I'll give her that." "That's what I thought too," Dante said quietly. The tension in the room shifted, not quite breaking but bending slightly. A few people nodded, others still looked skeptical, but no one else challenged. Dante went through the formal introductions then, names and roles that blurred together in Alara's head. Marco, she already knew. Elena ran logistics for the shipping operations. Vincent handled security. Carlo, the man who'd knocked her wrist that first night, oversaw the restaurant investments and looked thoroughly uncomfortable meeting her eyes. There were others. Too many to remember all at once. But they all knew her name now, knew her face, knew she was under Dante's protection. It felt like being branded, marked as belonging to someone in a way that should have felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like armor. The meeting shifted to business after that, discussions of shipments and territories and problems Alara didn't fully understand. She stood beside Dante and listened, trying to piece together the scope of his empire from context clues. It was bigger than she'd thought, more complicated, more legitimately successful mixed with the illegal operations. After an hour, Dante touched her arm. "You can sit if you want. This is going to take a while." She sat in the chair beside his and watched him work. He was different here, harder, sharper, the warmth he showed her completely absent. He made decisions quickly, shut down arguments efficiently, and commanded the room with an authority that was almost casual in its absoluteness. This was Dante Varelli, not the man who played piano or asked about art. The boss, the criminal, the person everyone in this room feared at least a little. And he'd chosen her. The meeting finally ended around 1. People dispersed quickly, most nodding to Dante as they left, a few offering Alara awkward acknowledgement. Elena was the last to leave, and she paused beside Alara's chair. "Advice?" "Sure," Alara said. "Don't try to change him. And don't let him change you. If this is going to work, you both need to stay who you are." She glanced at Dante, who was talking to Marco near the door. "He's a good man in a bad business. Don't forget which part matters most." "Which part do you think matters most?" Elena smiled slightly. "That he's good. The business is just what he does. It's not who he is. Remember that, when things get hard." She left before Alara could respond. Dante came back and offered his hand. "How are you doing?" "Overwhelmed, confused, a little terrified. Sounds about right. He pulled her up and into his arms. You did well. Elena's approval means something. Does she always give relationship advice? Only when she likes someone. She must see something in you. Or she feels sorry for me. Doubt it. Elena doesn't do pity. He kissed her temple. Come on, let's get out of here. They had lunch at a small Italian place that Dante swore made the best carbonara in Chicago. The owner greeted him by name, hugged him like family, and didn't ask questions about Alara. They sat in a corner booth and ate in comfortable silence. Can I ask you something? Alara said eventually. Always. What happened to your father? You said he died when you were 22. Dante's expression closed off slightly, but he didn't deflect. Heart attack, quick. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was a hard man, not particularly kind, but he built something, and when he died, it fell to me to keep it running. He pushed pasta around his plate. I wasn't ready. Spent the first year making mistakes, losing money, nearly getting us all killed because I was too young and too stupid to know what I was doing. But you figured it out. Eventually, with a lot of help and a lot of luck. He met her eyes, and a lot of violence. I had to prove I wasn't weak, wasn't my father's soft son, so I became harder than he ever was. Do you regret it? Every day, and not at all. I don't know which feeling is true anymore. She reached across the table and took his hand. Maybe they both are. Maybe you can regret what you had to become and still accept that you did what you had to do. That's a kind interpretation. It's an honest one. They finished lunch and walked through the neighborhood, Marco trailing at a discreet distance. The afternoon was cool and cloudy, threatening rain. Alara watched the city move around them, people living normal lives, going to work, meeting friends, completely unaware of the man walking beside her or what he represented. What are you thinking? Dante asked. That two worlds exist right on top of each other, yours and theirs, and most people never know the other one exists. That's how it works best, when it's invisible. Does it ever bother you that they don't know? Sometimes. Mostly I'm grateful. Invisibility is safety. He glanced at her. You understand that better than most. She did. She'd spent years being invisible, blending in, staying safe. Now she was the most visible she'd ever been, standing beside the most dangerous man in Chicago, and paradoxically feeling safer than she had in her entire life. They spent the afternoon at his apartment, existing in the comfortable domesticity they'd found. Dante had more calls to make, more business to handle. Alara found herself in his office, looking at the dusty piano again. On impulse, she sat down and started playing. The melody came haltingly at first, her fingers remembering patterns from 15 years ago. But slowly, it smoothed out, and she lost herself in the simple pleasure of making sound. She didn't hear Dante come in until he spoke. What is that? Nothing, just something I'm making up. He sat beside her on the bench. Play it again. She did, and he listened with complete attention. When she finished, he placed his hands on the keys beside hers and added a harmony line. It was rough and unpracticed, but it fit. They played together, making up melodies that went nowhere, laughing when they hit wrong notes, and for a few minutes the weight of everything else disappeared. They were just two people playing piano, finding beauty in imperfection. When they finally stopped, Alara leaned against his shoulder. We should do this more. Make noise on an out-of-tune piano? Be normal. Whatever that means for us. His arm came around her. I'd like that. The moment was interrupted by Dante's phone. He looked at the screen and his expression hardened. I have to take this. He stepped into the hallway, and Alara heard his voice go cold and sharp. When he came back 10 minutes later, his whole posture had changed. What's wrong? Castellano. He's making moves despite our agreement. Dante's jaw was tight. He hit one of my warehouses on the south side. Burned it. 2 of my people are in the hospital. Alara's stomach dropped. What are you going to do? What I should have done at the meeting. End this permanently. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking his phone. Marco's going to stay with you. Don't leave the apartment. Don't answer the door for anyone but me. Dante, wait. He turned back, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It was cold and empty and promised violence. I have to handle this. I know, just... She didn't know what she was asking for. Reassurance? A promise he'd come back? Be careful. His expression softened slightly. He crossed to her and cupped her face in his hands. I'll come back, I promise. You can't promise that. I can and I am. He kissed her, hard and desperate. Stay here, stay safe. I'll be back before morning. Then he was gone, and Alara was left alone in the apartment with Marco standing guard outside the door. The hours crawled by. She tried reading, tried TV, tried everything to distract herself from imagining what Dante was doing, where he was, if he was hurt. Marco came in around 8 to check on her. Any news? She asked. He's handling it, that's all I know. Is he safe? Marco's expression was carefully neutral. He's the most dangerous person in that situation. It's everyone else who should be worried. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. She tried to sleep around midnight, but every sound made her jump. Every car on the street could be him coming home, or someone coming for her. At 3 a.m., she heard the lock turn. She was out of bed and in the living room before Dante made it through the door. He looked exhausted and there was blood on his shirt, but he was walking and breathing and whole. Are you hurt? She was checking him before he could answer, running her hands over his arms, his chest, looking for wounds. It's not mine. His voice was flat, empty. I'm fine. Dante, it's done. Castellano's gone. His operation's gone. Everyone who knew about you is gone. He said it like he was reciting a grocery list. You're safe now. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they made her chest tight. How many people? Does it matter? Yes. He met her eyes, and she saw the exhaustion there, the weight of what he'd done. 12, counting Castellano. 12 lives. Ended because of her, because keeping her safe meant eliminating threats. She should have felt sick, should have recoiled from this man who'd just killed 12 people without hesitation. Instead, she pulled him close and held on tight. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. This was always coming. You were just the excuse, not the reason. He buried his face in her hair. I need a shower. Okay. He pulled back and she saw the blood more clearly now, splattered across his shirt, his hands. Evidence of violence she couldn't begin to imagine. Join me? He asked quietly. It wasn't about sex. It was about not being alone with what he'd done. About grounding himself in something other than violence. Yeah, okay. They showered together in silence, the water running red, then pink, then clear as the blood washed away. Alara washed his back, his arms, his hands, and he let her. When they were finally clean, they dried off and climbed into his bed. He pulled her against him, and she felt him shaking. I don't regret it, he said into the darkness. I should, but I don't. They would have come for you eventually. This way you're safe. I know. Does that make me a monster? She thought about it. About the man who played piano and asked about art and held her like she was something precious. About the man who'd just killed 12 people to protect her. I don't know, maybe. But you're my monster. He laughed, and it sounded broken. That's the worst offense I've ever heard. It's the truth. She turned in his arms to face him. I'm not going to pretend I understand what you did tonight. I'm not going to say it's okay or justified or anything else that makes it easier, but I'm also not leaving. I'm staying right here with you. Why? Because I love you. The words came out before she'd planned them, before she'd even realized they were true. But saying them, she knew they were. She loved him. This complicated, dangerous, broken man who'd killed for her and would probably kill again. She loved him despite everything and because of everything, and in a way that probably made her just as broken as he was. He stared at her, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. I love you. And that probably makes me crazy or stupid or both, but it's true. He kissed her then, and it tasted like desperation and hope, and all the things neither of them knew how to say. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too. I've loved you since you sat across from me and talked about art like it mattered more than anything. Since you looked at me like I was human instead of a weapon. His voice cracked. You're the first good thing I've had in years, and I'm terrified I'm going to destroy you. You won't. You don't know that. Then we'll find out together. They held each other in the darkness, and eventually Dante's breathing evened out into sleep. But Alara lay awake, staring at the ceiling and processing everything that had happened. She'd fallen in love with a criminal, a murderer, a man who'd just wiped out 12 people to keep her safe. She should leave, should run as far and fast as possible, should recognize this for the toxic, dangerous situation it was. But lying there with Dante's arms around her, feeling his heartbeat against her back, all she felt was certainty. This was where she belonged, with him, in this life, even if it destroyed her, especially then. The next few weeks settled into a strange new normal. Dante went back to running his empire, but he came home every night. Alara still couldn't go back to her apartment. It wasn't safe, might never be safe, but she started making his place feel like hers too. She bought groceries, cooked dinners, rearranged books. She also started painting again. Dante had noticed her sketching one evening, and the next day came home with canvases, paints, brushes, professional quality, the kind she'd never been able to afford. "I can't accept this," she'd said, looking at the expensive supplies. "Why not?" "Because it's too much." "It's paint, Alara, not a car." He'd pulled her close. "Let me do this. Let me give you back something you lost." So she painted. Abstract things at first, just color and emotion, then landscapes from memory. Then one evening, she painted him. Not how he looked in suits and power, how he looked in the mornings with coffee and bedhead, how he looked playing piano with rusty fingers finding forgotten melodies, how he looked when he smiled at her like she was the only real thing in his world. When she showed him, he stared at it for a long time without speaking. "Is that how you see me?" "Yes, I look soft, happy. You are, sometimes, when you let yourself be." He pulled her into his arms and just held her, and she felt him shaking slightly. "Thank you," he whispered. She also started meeting his people on her own terms. Elena invited her for coffee one afternoon, and they talked about everything except the business. Elena had been a lawyer once, before Dante's father had recruited her for logistics work. She was smart and sharp, and completely unimpressed by Dante's dangerous reputation. "He's different with you," Elena said over espresso. "Lighter, like he remembers he's allowed to be happy." "Is that a good thing?" "Depends. Happy people make mistakes, get distracted, let their guard down." Elena met her eyes. "But they also have something to lose, makes them more careful in the ways that matter." "You think I make him more careful?" "I think you make him more human. Whether that's good or bad, we'll see." Vincent, the security chief, was harder to crack, but he started nodding to her when he was at the apartment, stopped treating her like a fragile asset. Marco became something like a friend, or as much of a friend as someone assigned to protect you could be. Even Carlo, the man who'd knocked her wrist that first night, apologized properly one evening when he came to drop off documents. "I'm sorry about that night, about starting all this." "It's okay." "It's not. But I'm glad you're here anyway. He needs someone like you." The apartment slowly filled with evidence of her life alongside his. Her books next to his on the shelves, her clothes in half the closet, her paintings leaning against walls waiting to be hung. And every night, Dante came home to her. Tired or energized, stressed or satisfied, but always home. They cooked together, ate together, talked about everything and nothing. He told her about his day in careful terms that skirted the illegal parts, and she told him about the painting she was working on or the book she was reading. It felt like playing house. Like pretending at a life they couldn't actually have. But it also felt real. One evening in late August, Alara was cooking dinner when her phone rang. Unknown number, but something made her answer. "Alara Quinn?" "Yes?" "This is Amanda Chen from the Chicago Arts Institute. I'm calling about your application to our curator program." Her stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your application. We received it last month along with your portfolio. I have to say, your work is impressive. We'd like to offer you a place in our next cohort." "I didn't—" She stopped, looked across the kitchen to where Dante was reading something on his tablet. "Can I call you back?" "Of course. You have my number." She hung up and stared at Dante until he looked up. "What's wrong?" "Did you submit an application to the Arts Institute for me?" He had the grace to look slightly guilty. "Yes." "When?" "A month ago. I found your old application materials in your bag, updated the portfolio with photos of your new paintings, and sent it in." She didn't know whether to laugh or scream. You can't just do that. Why not? Because it's my life, Dante. My decisions. I know, but you wanted this. You told me you did, and you were letting fear and practicality stop you, so I removed the obstacles. By forging an application? By giving you a chance to choose. They accepted you. Whether you take the spot is entirely up to you. He set down his tablet. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to give you back the dream you gave up. The anger drained out of her. She sat down heavily on the sofa. I can't afford it. I can. I can't let you pay for it. Why not? I pay for everything else. That's different. That's rent and groceries and necessities. This is necessary. For you. For who you're supposed to be. He came to kneel in front of her. Let me do this, please. You've given up so much to be with me. Let me give you something back. She wanted to refuse on principle, wanted to be independent and strong and not need anyone's help. But she also wanted this, wanted it so badly she could taste it. It's a 2-year program, she said quietly. I know. That's a long time to invest in someone. Good thing I'm planning on keeping you around longer than that. She searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Found none. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. His smile was brilliant and real and full of joy. He pulled her down and kissed her, and she felt her whole world shifting into something new. She called the institute back the next morning and accepted the spot. Classes started in 3 weeks. The first semester at the institute was harder than Alara expected. Not the coursework. She devoured that like someone starving. But balancing 2 worlds proved nearly impossible. During the day, she studied Renaissance iconography and contemporary installation theory. At night, she came home to a man who'd spent his day negotiating illegal shipments and managing an empire built on fear. The disconnect gave her whiplash. Her classmates were younger mostly, fresh out of undergraduate programs with trust funds and internships at galleries their parents' friends owned. They talked about thesis projects and networking events and summers in Florence. Alara smiled and nodded and never mentioned that she lived with Chicago's most dangerous criminal. 3 months in, a classmate named Jessica invited her for drinks after class. You're so mysterious, Jessica said over wine at a bar near campus. You never talk about yourself. There's not much to tell. Come on, where do you live? What do you do for work? Do you have a boyfriend? Jessica leaned in conspiratorially. The girls and I have a bet. Half think you're secretly married to some tech billionaire. The other half think you're in witness protection. Alara laughed, but it sounded hollow. Nothing that dramatic. I just value my privacy. Boring. Give me something. One interesting fact about Alara Quinn. She thought about it. What could she say that was true, but safe? I used to be a waitress at Aurelio's. That fancy place downtown, did you meet anyone famous? A few people. No one you'd know. It was technically true. Jessica wouldn't know Dante Varelli. People like Jessica lived in a world where criminals were abstract concepts, not men you shared breakfast with. When Alara got home that night, Dante took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. Rough day? Just long. Different. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar smell of his cologne. Sometimes I feel like I'm living 2 separate lives. You are. Doesn't that bother you? Every day. But it's necessary. He tilted her chin up. You can't tell them about me. You know that, right? I know, but lying by omission feels exhausting. It's the price we pay. You for having me for having you. His thumb traced her cheekbone. If it's too much, it's not. I'm just tired. He carried her to the sofa, and they sat together while he told her about his day in the careful, edited way he'd perfected. A shipping problem resolved, a meeting with investors in one of his legitimate businesses. Nothing illegal mentioned explicitly, but everything tinged with the reality of what he was. Elena asked about you today, he said eventually. What about me? How you're handling things. She worries you're going to wake up one day and realize what you've gotten into. I already know what I've gotten into. Do you? He shifted to look at her directly. Because it's been almost 6 months, and you still haven't seen the worst of it. You haven't had to lie to the police, haven't watched me come home with blood on my hands, haven't had someone threaten you directly. I watched you leave to kill 12 people. I showered blood off you. That's different. That was abstract. What I'm talking about is when it gets personal. When someone puts a gun to your head to get to me. When you have to choose between telling the truth and keeping me safe. The words hung heavy between them. She knew he was right. She'd been living in a bubble, protected, insulated, kept carefully separate from the darkest parts of his world. Are you trying to scare me off? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're choosing before it's too late to change your mind. It's already too late. I love you. That doesn't come with an expiration date. It might when things get hard. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes, we face it together. Stop trying to give me an exit. I'm trying to give you a choice. I already made my choice 6 months ago, every day since. I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. He kissed her then, desperate and deep, and she felt the fear in it. The certainty that he was going to lose her, that she'd wake up and realize she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd have to prove him wrong, again and again, for however long it took. Winter came to Chicago with its usual brutality. Alara's second semester started in January, and with it came a new challenge, her first major project. She had to curate a small exhibition, from concept to execution, that would be displayed in the Institute's gallery. She chose violence and beauty as her theme, paintings and photographs that captured both. War photography next to Renaissance martyrdom, contemporary protest art beside classical tragedy. It was ambitious, probably too much for a first-year student, but she couldn't help herself. The project consumed her. She spent hours in the Institute's archives, tracking down pieces, negotiating loans from other collections. She barely slept, living on coffee and adrenaline. Dante watched her work with something like awe. "You're obsessed," he said one night, finding her surrounded by printouts and notes at 2 a.m. "I'm focused. You're burning out." He pulled her away from the table. "Come to bed." "I need to finish." "You need to sleep. The exhibition isn't for 2 months. You have time." But she didn't feel like she had time. This was her chance to prove she belonged here, that she wasn't just some waitress playing at being a curator, that Dante's investment in her education wasn't wasted. She pushed harder, worked longer, ignored the exhaustion pulling at her edges. It came to a head on a Tuesday in February. She was at the Institute late, reviewing final selections with her advisor, when her phone rang. Dante. She ignored it. He knew she was working. It rang again, then a text. "Call me now." Her stomach dropped. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. "What's wrong?" "Where are you?" His voice was tight. "At school. What happened?" "There's been a situation. Marco's on his way to get you. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere alone. Just wait for him." "Dante, you're scaring me." "Good. Be scared, but also be smart. Marco will be there in 10 minutes. Stay inside until then." He hung up before she could ask more questions. Marco arrived exactly 10 minutes later, his expression grim. He didn't speak until they were in the car with the locks engaged and moving. "What happened?" Alara demanded. "Someone took a shot at Dante this afternoon. Missed, but not by much." Her whole world tilted. "Is he okay?" "He's fine. Pissed off, but fine. He wants you somewhere secure until we figure out who's behind it." "Who would—" "I thought Castellano was gone. I thought this was over." "Castellano is gone. This is someone new, or someone old with a fresh grudge. Hard to say." Marco's hands were tight on the steering wheel. "But until we know, you're in danger. Anyone close to Dante is." They didn't go to the apartment. Instead, Marco drove her to a house in the suburbs she'd never seen before. A safe house, apparently, kept for situations exactly like this. Dante was already there, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. When he saw her, he ended the call and pulled her into his arms so tight she could barely breathe. "You're okay." "I'm fine." "Are you okay?" "I'm alive. That's what counts." He pulled back, checking her over like Marco might have missed an injury. "You're staying here tonight. Maybe longer. I have people trying to figure out who ordered the hit." "How long have you known someone was coming for you?" "I always know someone's coming for me. That's the job." He saw her expression and his voice softened. "This is what I was talking about. This is when it gets real." She wanted to argue, wanted to say she could handle it, but her hands were shaking and her heart was racing, and the reality of how close she'd come to losing him was hitting like a freight train. "I can't lose you," she whispered. "You won't. I'm too stubborn to die." He tried for humor, but it fell flat. "I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming." "How could you? You can't predict everything." "I'm supposed to. That's the whole point of staying ahead. You anticipate threats before they materialize." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I got comfortable. Let my guard down. That was stupid. That was human. Same thing, in my world." They spent the night in the safe house with armed guards outside and tension thick enough to choke on. Dante made calls, gathered information, and slowly pieced together who was behind the attempt. A rival from New York. Someone who thought Dante going soft over a woman meant weakness. Someone who'd decided to test whether Chicago's most feared man had lost his edge. "They're going to regret that," Dante said, his voice cold and empty in a way that made Alara's skin crawl. "What are you going to do?" "What I always do? Make an example." He left at dawn with Marco and 4 others. Told her to stay put, stay safe, that he'd be back by nightfall. But nightfall came and went, and he didn't return. Alara paced the safe house, watched the clock, and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. The guards were polite, but unhelpful. They didn't know anything, or they weren't telling her if they did. It was 3 a.m. when the door finally opened. Dante walked in alone, and this time the blood on his clothes was definitely his. His left arm hung at an odd angle, and there was a cut above his eye that was still bleeding. Jesus! Alara was across the room in seconds. "What happened?" "It's handled, but I need you to help me with something." "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospitals. They report gunshot wounds. I have someone who can fix this, but he's an hour away." He sat down heavily on the sofa. "Until then, I need you to stop the bleeding." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on proper medical care, but the look in his eyes told her this wasn't up for debate. She found a first aid kit and went to work. The cut above his eye was deep but clean. She closed it with butterfly bandages, hands steadier than she expected. The arm was harder. It was dislocated, maybe broken, and touching it made him go white with pain. "I can't fix this," she said. "I know. Just wrap it. Immobilize it until Carlos gets here." She did her best, fashioning a sling from a torn sheet. While she worked, he told her what happened. The New York rival had been ready for retaliation. Had an ambush set up, 6 men with automatic weapons. Dante's people had taken them out, but not before he'd taken a round to the shoulder and gotten his arm wrenched in the fight. The rival? Dead. His second in command, too. Anyone who knew about the hit. Dante's voice was flat. "It's over." "Is it ever really over?" "No, there's always someone else. Always another threat." He looked at her with exhausted eyes. "This is the life, Alara. This is what it looks like, and it's not going to change." She finished wrapping his arm and sat back, looked at this man she loved, covered in blood and bruises, who'd just killed people to protect himself and her and everything they'd built together. She should feel horrified, should be running for the door, calling the police, doing anything except sitting here calmly bandaging a murderer. Instead, she kissed his forehead and said, "I know, and I'm still here." Carlos arrived an hour later, a former army medic who asked no questions and worked efficiently. He set Dante's shoulder with a sickening pop, stitched the deeper cuts, and left pills for the pain. "You'll live," Carlos said, "but you need rest, real rest, not your version of it." "I'll rest when I'm dead." "That'll be sooner than you think if you keep this up." Carlos looked at Alara. "Make him rest. He won't listen to me, but he might listen to you." After Carlos left, Alara helped Dante to the bedroom and got him settled. He was asleep almost before his head hit the pillow, exhaustion and pain medication pulling him under. She sat beside him and watched him sleep. This dangerous man who looked almost peaceful with his defenses down. His face was bruised, his arm in a proper sling now, bandages covering various cuts and scrapes. Evidence of violence, of the life he lived, of the price he paid for power. And she loved him anyway. That was the truth she'd been dancing around for months. Not despite what he was, but inclusive of it. The violence and the vulnerability, the power and the piano playing, the man who killed without hesitation, and the man who submitted fake applications because he wanted her to chase her dreams. All of it. She loved all of it. The realization should have scared her. Instead, it felt like acceptance. When Dante woke up around noon, she was still there. "You didn't sleep," he said, voice rough. "Couldn't. Elara, I've been thinking." She cut him off before he could start the familiar refrain about how she should leave, how she deserved better. "About what you said, that this is the life and it won't change." "It won't." "I know, and I'm tired of pretending I don't understand that. I'm tired of you waiting for me to wake up and realize what I've gotten into." She took his good hand. "I know what this is. I know what you are. And I choose it anyway. So stop trying to give me an exit. I don't want one." He stared at her, something raw and hopeful crossing his face. "You say that now, but eventually nothing. I'm in this all the way. For however long you'll have me. Forever," he said immediately. "I'll have you forever if you'll stay." "Then I'll stay forever." He pulled her down and kissed her, careful of his injuries, and she tasted salt and realized one of them was crying, maybe both. "I love you," he said against her mouth. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good. I'm terrified too. We can be terrified together." They stayed at the safe house for 3 more days while Dante healed and his people cleaned up the mess. When they finally went back to the apartment, it felt like coming home after a war. Life settled again, but different this time. The fear was still there, would always be there, but so was the certainty. They'd faced the worst of it and survived, not unscathed, but together. Elara threw herself back into her exhibition with renewed focus. The violence and beauty theme felt more relevant than ever. She understood it now in a way she hadn't before. How the two could exist in the same space, the same person, the same life. The exhibition opened in April to better reviews than she'd expected. Her advisor called it mature and unflinching, which Elara took as a compliment. A few of her classmates came, including Jessica, who cornered her at the reception. "This is intense," Jessica said, looking at a photograph of a protest turning violent next to a Caravaggio study. "Where did you get the inspiration?" "Life," Elara said simply. Dante came to the opening too, bringing Elena and Marco and a few others from his world. They looked out of place among the art students and faculty, but Dante moved through the gallery with genuine interest, studying each piece. "You did this," he said, finding her near the end. "You created something beautiful. We both create things. Yours are just different. Mine are uglier. Sometimes, not always." She leaned against him. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." He kissed her temple. "I'm proud of you." Those words, from him, meant more than any review. Summer came. Elara finished her first year at the top of her class. Dante's empire continued its complicated turning, violence and business, and constant vigilance. They found rhythm in the chaos, built a life in the spaces between danger. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, about his work, her safety, the fundamental incompatibility of their two worlds. But they always came back together, always chose each other over the easy exit. In July, Dante took her to dinner at Aurelio's. Their table, the one where everything had started with a broken glass and a moment of eye contact that changed 2 lives. "Why here?" she asked. "Because this is where it began," seemed right. He pulled a small box from his jacket. "I'm not good at this. I've never done this before, but I need to ask you something." Her heart stopped. "Dante, let me finish. Please." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. "I know I have no right to ask this. I know I'm dangerous and damaged and everything you should run from, but I'm asking anyway. Marry me. Not because it makes sense or because it's safe, but because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you in it." She looked at the ring, at his face, at the fear and hope warring in his expression. Thought about everything they'd been through, everything they'd survived, everything still to come. "Yes," she said. "Yes? Yes. I'll marry you, today, tomorrow, whenever you want. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and for a moment the restaurant disappeared. There was just them. Just this choice they were making to bind their lives together, despite everything that said they shouldn't. When they finally broke apart, she noticed tears on his face. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Probably not. But you have me anyway." They told his people first. Elena cried and hugged them both. Marco shook Dante's hand and told Ilara she was braver than any soldier he'd known. Vincent nodded and said he'd increase security for the wedding. Telling her friend Jenna was harder. "Are you insane?" Jenna demanded when they met for coffee. "You're marrying him? The criminal?" "Yes." "Ilara, think about this. Really think. This isn't some romance novel. This is your actual life." "I know what it is." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're throwing away everything for a man who could get you killed." "Maybe. But I'd rather have 6 months with him than 60 years with someone safe and boring." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Probably. But it's how I feel." Jenna was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You really love him." "I really do." "And he treats you well, doesn't hurt you, doesn't control you." "He treats me like I'm the most important thing in his world. And he lets me make my own choices, even when he hates them." "Then I guess I'm happy for you, even if I think you're both crazy." "We are, but we're crazy together." They planned a small wedding for September. Just close friends and family, which for Dante meant his sister Sophia flying in from Boston and a handful of his most trusted people. For Ilara, it meant Jenna and her former co-worker Marcus, and not much else. Sophia arrived 2 days before the wedding and immediately pulled Ilara aside. "I need to know you understand what you're getting into." "Everyone keeps asking me that." "Because it's important. I love my brother, but I also know what he is, what he does, the danger he brings." Sophia's eyes were fierce. "If you're doing this because you're scared to leave, I'll help you disappear, right now, no questions." "I'm not scared to leave. I'm choosing to stay." "Why?" "Because I love him. Because he loves me. Because we're better together than apart, even with all the danger and complications." Sophia studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. But if he ever hurts you, you call me. I'll destroy him myself." "Deal." The wedding was small and private, held in a garden outside the city with security that would make the Secret Service jealous. Ilara wore a simple white dress she'd found at a vintage shop. Dante wore a dark suit and looked at her like she was the only person in the world. They wrote their own vows. Hers were about choosing love over fear, about building something beautiful in the midst of chaos. His were about being worth the choice she was making, about protecting her and cherishing her for however long they both lived. When the officiant pronounced them married, Dante kissed her and whispered, "Thank you for staying. Thank you for giving me something worth staying for." The reception was small but joyful. Elena made a toast about love conquering even the darkest circumstances. Sophia gave a speech about her brother finally finding someone strong enough to handle him. Marco just raised his glass and said, "To the bravest woman I know." Late in the evening, Ilara found Dante standing alone at the edge of the garden, looking out at the city lights. "You okay?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "I'm happy." Terrified, but happy. He looked down at their joined hands, at the rings they now both wore. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Something probably will, eventually, but we'll handle it." "You sound certain." "I am. We've survived everything else. We'll survive whatever comes next." He pulled her close and they swayed to music that was only in their heads. Two people who'd found each other against all odds and chosen to stay despite all the reasons they shouldn't. "I love you, Mrs. Virelli." She smiled against his chest. "I love you too." 6 months into their marriage, Ilara was offered a position at the Institute, junior curator, with opportunities to develop her own exhibitions. It was everything she'd dreamed of, and she accepted immediately. Dante celebrated by buying her a studio space near the Institute where she could work without bringing the chaos of his world into her professional life. He was getting better at separating the two, at letting her have something that was entirely hers. He was also starting to change in other ways. Small things at first. He started playing piano again, taking an hour most evenings to work through pieces he'd forgotten. He talked more about legitimate business ventures, about slowly shifting away from the illegal operations that defined him. "I'm getting too old for this," he said one night. He was 39 now, and the violence was taking its toll. "And I have too much to lose." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time to start building an exit strategy. Not tomorrow, but eventually." He looked at her carefully. "Would you want that? A life where I'm just a businessman instead of a criminal?" I want whatever makes you happy. But yes, I'd like to not worry about you getting shot every time you leave the house. Then let's work toward that, slowly, carefully. But let's try. It took 2 years. 2 years of carefully transitioning power, of selling off the illegal operations to people Dante trusted not to turn them into nightmares. 2 years of investing in legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, shipping companies that actually shipped legal goods. 2 years of slowly becoming someone new while holding on to the core of who he was. It wasn't smooth. There were setbacks, violence, moments when it seemed impossible. But Dante was stubborn and Alara was patient, and together they built something different. By the time Alara curated her first major exhibition at the Institute, a retrospective on violence in American art, Dante had successfully transitioned to mostly legitimate work. He still had connections to his old world, still commanded respect and fear, but he wasn't actively running a criminal empire anymore. He was just a businessman, wealthy, powerful, but legal. The exhibition opened to critical acclaim, national press coverage, visitors from across the country, a waiting list for tours. Alara stood in the gallery on opening night, watching people engage with the art she'd chosen and contextualized, and felt like she'd finally become who she was meant to be. Dante found her near midnight, after most of the crowd had gone. "You did it," he said. "We did it. I couldn't have gotten here without you." "You could have. It might have taken longer, but you'd have found your way." He pulled her close. "I just helped remove some obstacles." "You gave me back my dreams. You gave me a reason to change." They stood together in the empty gallery, surrounded by images of violence and beauty, destruction and hope, all the contradictions that made up human existence. "Are you happy?" Alara asked quietly. "Yes." "Are you?" "Yes." It was true. They were happy. Not in the simple way, not without complications or challenges or the occasional reminder of what Dante used to be, but genuinely, deeply happy. They'd built a life together from broken glass and bad decisions and love that defied logic. They'd survived attempts on their lives, the weight of impossible choices, and the fundamental incompatibility of their two worlds. And they'd come out the other side still together, still choosing each other, still building something beautiful in the midst of chaos. That was the thing about love, Alara had learned. It wasn't about finding someone perfect. It wasn't about easy or safe or sensible. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, worth changing for, worth building a whole new life for. Dante was her person. The dangerous criminal who played piano, the man who'd killed to protect her and then worked for years to become someone worthy of her faith in him. And she was his, the invisible waitress who'd learned to take up space, who'd fallen in love with a monster and found a man instead. Together, they were proof that people could change, that love could survive in the darkest places, that sometimes the most broken people could build the most beautiful lives. 5 years after that shattered wine glass changed everything, they stood in a home they'd bought together, a house with space for her studio and his piano, for the life they'd built and the life they were still building. "No regrets?" Dante asked, pulling her close on their back porch as the sun set over Chicago. "Not one. You?" "Just that I didn't meet you sooner." She laughed. "We met exactly when we were supposed to. Any earlier and it wouldn't have worked. You think there's a plan, that we were meant to find each other? I think we were two broken people who got lucky. And then we chose not to waste that luck." He kissed her as the city spread out below them, full of people living their own complicated lives, making their own impossible choices, building their own version of love from whatever pieces they had available. What had started as a single moment, a dropped glass, a locked gaze, a choice to stay instead of run, had become a whole life. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth every risk they'd taken, because in the end, that's what love was. A risk, a leap, a choice to believe that together was better than safe, that imperfect was enough, that two broken people could build something whole if they just refused to give up on each other. They'd chosen each other in the darkness, and they'd found their way to light. Not because the darkness disappeared, but because they'd learned to carry it together, to build beauty alongside the violence, to find hope in the midst of chaos. And that, Alara thought, as Dante held her close and the city hummed below them, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.